Okay. All right. Well, happy Wednesday, everyone. Can you believe it? We're halfway through February, and I am joined here today by the amazing Malena Mesarina. And I'm actually in Virginia today. And Malena, are you up there in New Hampshire? Is that correct?
Yes. Hello, everybody.
Excellent. So I am excited to get to share Malena's amazingness with you. For those of us who were here last week, I'm going to apologize in advance for the trolls that we have, but we've put some guardrails in place here. So if you do have any questions as we go, we ask that you type that into the chat. And then we'll read those out, as well as then we may have some other opportunities where we ask you to, raise your hand to be able to unmute. We can then unmute you. And we will be sending out the recording from this, or anyone who needs to drop off. We can have you drop off and trust that we will be sending that out after the fact. And I'll share at the end who our next guest will be in this series. But in the meantime, many of you know already about me. I've been a career coach, I've been a recruiter, and I've been a marketer and a product manager and a substance abuse counselor. I've done a bunch of things. I've made some career transitions, and I've been laid off twice in the process. So I want to share at the front end here a little bit about the stress and dealing with what you might be facing right now, whether you have been laid off or whether you're concerned about getting laid off, or you're not going to be turned, you're not going to getting laid off, but you're just not happy where you are. Vanilla, you are happy to have on or off. We love seeing your bright smiley faces, but we also know that some of you are maybe commuting or didn't have the best day or multitasking. So we are happy with either way with cameras on or off. And with that, I want to go ahead and let the amazing Malena share a little bit about herself, and then we'll go from there.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Malena Mesarina, and I'm a co-founder of Stellar Peers, which is a platform for people to prepare for job interviews, particularly for product-related interviews, product management, product marketing, even data science. And I'm going to be talking more about that. My background is, in terms of academic background, I am an electrical engineer, and also I have a master's in computer science and an MBA from Haas. So I kind of combine business and technology all together. That's my forte. And I've been coaching people for a while since I founded Stellar Peers. We'll talk more about that. And here today, I'm going to talk about how to get confidence in your interviews.
Excellent. Because that makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. Great. All right. Well, thank you, Malena. And let's just talk a little bit. So if you're here last week, this first part will look a little bit familiar, but hopefully not interrupted. So we can appreciate right now that life can maybe feel a little stressful, and it can maybe feel like the obstacles just keep coming at us. I was a hurdler in college, and I actually coached people, not just in career, but I coached people to hurdle over actual physical obstacles too. And so I know what it can feel like to be facing something that feels daunting. And when we are feeling something daunting, it can feel like a threat. Now, I go back to Mr. Maslow and this hierarchy of needs, and I don't believe in hierarchies, but I do believe we all want a lot of these things. And it's really hard to go after that sense of purpose and growth and accomplishment if you're worried about your paycheck, right? And so those economic threats can really overshadow wanting to feel connection, can really overshadow wanting to do something meaningful that you're excited about in life. And so I want to just kind of look at some of those ways to feel supported in this process of what you're going through right now. And one of the things that can be really, really excruciating around layoffs is that sudden, abrupt removal of a really important network in your life. And to feel like you're maybe out there alone, and especially for some of these layoffs that happen virtually, there just hasn't been that community to process and feel like you're with it with anyone else. And so I've tried to make this place a space where you can potentially feel that, to see that you aren't alone in this process, that there are other amazing human beings out there who are really qualified, who are trying to figure out what's next from whatever vantage point, whether it be having been laid off or trying to re-enter the workforce, or just feeling like things are unstable where you are, or just miserable. So, and some of you are just kind of and just want something new. So I don't want to put labels on where you currently are, but I do want to say that it is really important to feel connection. It's really important to feel like you got some economic stability, to be able to have that mental bandwidth for the accomplishment and purpose. So I say we've got 7 effing responses, not just fight or flight. And those are fight, flee, freeze, flop, fuss, feed, and friend. We have our mobilizers, the one that want us to get out there, the immobilizers, and then the resourcers. These labels at the top, the mobilize, immobilize, resource, if anyone studied polyvagal theory, I borrow from there and then I expand. And one of the things, though, about things that happen physiologically in the body is that you can have the same hormones flooding around in your body for something that's really exciting that you want to do, and then for also something that feels really threatening, right? And so you can be all amped up to go out and run a race, or you can be all amped up to get out of Dodge because you feel threatened, right? Like, in many ways, it's the same thing physically, physiologically happening in us. It's just the context and the story that's around it of then how we're reacting. And so recognizing our body wants to have all 7 of these responses. And so giving our body the chance to exercise all of these responses, but in a healthy, productive way, so that maybe isn't in a self-medicating way or in a really downtrodden way. And we want to grieve, and we want to have that space to feel our range of emotions. And we also want to be able to have the chance to also feel like we're not being run by those emotions. We're not being run by those responses. So I like to say that we don't want to eliminate these effing responses. They're here to help us, elicit them as needed, and use them to keep us safe from harm, but also for self-expression. So sometimes we maybe actually need to flee a job. It may be a really bad environment and it is time to get out of there, but we want to help you manage that in a way that is, on your timeline. And sometimes jobs don't give us that timeline. They do the layoff. So then you're having to then scramble and get back caught up to speed on this. So the thing I want us to think about today is our friend response. And how I describe the friend response, it's that community. It's that not being alone in things. It's that in a healthy expression of friend response, it's asking for help. In a healthy expression of friend, it's putting on some boundaries and not saying yes to everything, and honoring yourself. And so I just want you to take a minute here and think about how connection, friend, community, just check in with yourself and seeing, when I say that, how, like, do you feel that in your body right now? Or who or what comes to mind when I say friend or support or connection or community? And you can put some of this stuff up in the chat if you want, of just like, as I'm talking about, as you assess right now in your life, how you're feeling on the friend meter, the support meter, the community, the connection meter. If there's been anything meaningful that's happened this week that has felt good, and maybe somebody checked in on you, maybe someone sent you a text, maybe maybe you reached out and checked in on someone else, right? So how are you being friend and support for others, or maybe how others are doing that for you? So I'm just going to take a few moments here. I want you to think about some maybe examples of how other people have shown up for you, and just start sharing some of this stuff in the chat. We want to see some of the good that's happening out there. I'm hoping that some of you have some examples that you can share here in the chat of some ways that you have felt supported, or that you've offered support, or maybe it's about saying the kind of support that you want. So excellent, thank you, Cynthia. So hiking group, yep, fabulous. Okay, the interview, if there's things, the positive affirmations, debriefs, right? So Vanilla, you were there for that friend. Fabulous, excellent. Okay. So this is something at any point in time, and I'm looking off up to my other monitor here. That's why you're seeing my throat here as I gaze off into the distance. But that chance to just check in with yourself to see how maybe you're feeling the lack of support or when it has shown up for you. So on this next one, let me get back over to this one. So I want you to, right now, the next prompt is to think of a cause that is important to you and a supportive person who you haven't contacted recently. And just taking a second here and just thinking through what is some cause that is important to you. And then also some supportive person that you haven't contacted recently. So Malena, I'm gonna, ask you here, like, what is a cause in your life that is important to you?
I think the cause for me is to help people actually land the dream job.
Yeah. So, and you're doing that with your purpose, right?
And that's why I created my company. Yeah,
exactly. And so you are embodying that, right? For me, I love doing the work that I do. I also think, I live out in the Pacific Northwest, and so orcas, saving the orcas, right, is a cause for me. So these things can be like in your professional life, in, for the environment, for a community cause, any sort of thing, right? Some political issue, whatever that thing may be. And so the reason I'm having you think about a cause that is important to you is that sometimes one of the best ways to get that friend support is to go connect with like-minded people who are like-minded on a cause that may have absolutely nothing to do with the day job that you're trying to do. It's like sometimes getting out of that professional network and getting into some other purposeful cause that has meaning to you can help you expand your network out of the people that you already know, who already love you, who maybe don't have an opportunity to hire you, where you can get yourself introduced into a new group of people who can see how passionate and interested and excited you are, and you can potentially volunteer or show up at an event and give back. And maybe that's another bullet on your resume. And maybe it's just like a way that you can release some anxiety. I've heard the phrase, and I don't know who to attribute it to, is maybe the Dalai Lama, but action is the antidote for anxiety, of being able to feel some agency in what you're doing and feeling like you're making a positive impact. And so this is one of the things that I'm inviting those of you who are here to do, is to think about a cause that's important to you, and then go look up on meetup.com or go look to see if they've got some nonprofit that they're having an event and you can physically show up and start meeting some new people and also feel like you're doing something. And then the second part of this is a supportive person you haven't contacted recently. And so I know that if you have a job and you're trying to look for a new one, they can feel like there's no time in the world. Or if you've been laid off, feeling like it's an indulgence to invest any time in doing anything other than job search. And what I would want to say is that, that supportive person who you haven't contacted recently, they probably miss you too. And so just thinking about that opportunity to show yourself some love through the people you love, who love you, it's just that self-fulfilling prophecy of re-inviting people into your life that maybe you have just been too busy to keep in touch with, right? It happens to all of us. So these are just a couple of the things that I would say as an opportunity to shift who you're interacting with, to invite some new people into your life, and to feel some support and go from there. So, all right, that was my how to cope with this stress response that we're dealing, my soundbite for this week. And so now I'm going to stop my share and let's Malena run the show for this next section.
And I have one question for you, Jenny.
Thank you. Yes.
About what you just said.
Yeah.
So I remember way back when, when I was younger and I was laid off, and I felt like you know, you feel bad because you feel like your skills are not needed, that you are not valuable, right? And so immediately I went in to look to help somebody with my skills, right? And I ended up wasting time, really, because I was frantic and I was nervous and I was like, I need some validation, right? So that didn't seem to me like a good thing to do at the time. I think that what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so it's like you were trying to like go out there and show the world that you had these skills.
Yeah, and I joined, you know, like I volunteered to help some organization, you know.
So where I would say is that it's like, even if you're a great marketer, it's not showing up to that nonprofit and marketing. It's like, you know, the soup kitchen where you can hand out, you know, it's even just like showing up and seeing what other people doing. It's like getting out and you're maybe just showing up and listening and being passive. Or you're like, hey, do you need a volunteer to help check people in at the door? Right.
But I think that, I mean, personally, I think that I felt like I was scrambling to do something, right? Because I had a job, I had a full-time job, I go every day to work. All of a sudden I have nothing. And I feel like, oh, I'm useless. So I need to do something, you know. So I'm gonna volunteer for an NGO and whatever. But I thought that the right thing to do was to just calm down first. And then
and I think for everyone, like it's gonna depend, right? And so having something to do with your day for some people is going to help them calm down because they're not like this, right? And so this is definitely like thinking about, and so maybe it's like you need to connect with those friends first. And you need to take some days and flop on the couch or go for long walks and go for hikes, right? And so it's that. Here's the thing of like, I throw things out. It's not to say you guys should have to go do this. Like, as I put those things out, I love that you said, like, for you actually went out there that first and it actually maybe felt like it fueled that frenzy. So it's what we're trying to do things here where I want you to put yourself in environments where you can feel validation.
And the cause, that there are people that have the same cause.
And like, and you're maybe just showing up and like you're not doing anything that would show up on your resume, but you can help like stuff envelopes. But maybe you are really good at envelope stuff, or you're a workout, right? And it's just like places they need help. Volunteering has dropped precipitously, exponentially during COVID. And so there's just a lot of people out there that don't need maybe your highest and best skills, but they just need someone to sit there and pack items into a food bank, right? Bag. So just some of those things to just feel like, how can I get out of the house and have some sense of self-worth that doesn't necessarily have to be tied to what I went to, you know, what I got trained.
Get out of yourself, basically.
Out of yourself. Yeah. Sometimes we just really need a break.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that.
And to hear from someone else say, thank you so much. I really appreciate you showing up today. So that's where I, you know, there's a friend episode of all good deeds are selfish deeds, because at the end of the day, you feel good because you've made someone else feel good. And it's this, you know, this loop. So.
All right.
So thank you for exploring that more.
All right. So it's my turn, Jenny. All right. So I'm going to, you know, I'm working with Prezi. So I'm just going to transfer this, enable here the Prezi camera and see if that works. Speaker. Can you guys see my, no, you cannot see it yet. Hold on. Oh, I have to make myself, I have to pin myself. This is, it's because you're the host. So I need to present my Prezi. So how do I blow it out? Oh, Jenny, I cannot hear you. Hold on. Maybe I need to. Okay. I cannot hear you. Do you have your mic on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, oh yeah. Sorry. Unmute.
So to be
Okay.
able to share, you need to be host. So if you can just make me co-host.
Okay, so I'll make you co-host.
And thanks for your patience, everyone.
All right.
Sometimes free is,
So am I host now?
Yep.
Huh. So
you should be able to share.
Yes, but this is not, well, I'm gonna try to do it this way then. All right. Let me just I'm in Byron. Okay. Okay, let's do it this way. So Prezi, what happens is with Prezi, it feeds the video into Zoom. But unfortunately, I think because you are the Zoom owner, it's not allowing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show my screen and we'll go with that. Okay. Okay. Right. So can everybody see this?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's go this way. So first of all, thank you very much for being here, right? And what I want to do today is to talk about how to gain confidence for the interviews that you guys may be having in the coming days, in the coming months, right? So, but before I do that, I want to run a poll of 3 questions, which are questions that are going to tell me a little bit about, your current situation. And I think, let me see, let me see the Zoom. So it was unexpected. Let's see.
Do you want me to read the polls?
Yeah, can you?
I can launch it. So you want me to launch the first one?
Yeah, launch the first one, yes. So the first one is about, how many of you were impacted by the layoffs?
And this is an anonymous poll.
So we have 57, 43, so half and half more or less, or 60, 30, 60, 40.
All right, I think most everyone has put their input in. So shall I pull that one down?
Yep, I guess. So it's quite a bit, like more than half of the people. All right, how about the second? The second question is, when was the last time you were interviewed? Has it been long? Like maybe, a week, a month?
See a nice range here. So
Nice range. They're very distributed.
Yeah, so no one should feel alone. Like everybody's got somebody else that has that same amount of time.
Okay. We have 35%. It's over 3 years, so you're probably a little bit anxious about your interview, but don't fear. We'll talk about that. Okay, so the last call.
Okay, and let's go back.
And let me see. That's question types, yeah. Somewhat familiar, very familiar. So people are more or less somewhat familiar and above, which is pretty good. That puts you in a good position. All right, thank you so much for that, for those answers. That was fun. And let's continue with our presentation. All right. So, so let's talk about the job market today, right? So it's kind of crazy. It's been 200,000 people basically that have been laid off since 2022, right? So that's a pretty big number. And the big tech companies, they have frozen hiring, right? So that is a concern. But and you might think that there are no jobs out there, but that is not true. There are actually a lot of jobs out there. But the jobs that are out there are probably jobs that you're not considering, right? Jobs that are not in the tech sector, for example, that are in healthcare, that are in the food industry, that are in the hospitality industry, and so on. And in small and medium-sized companies, right? So there are very good jobs out there. So there are opportunities that you can go after. Now, the reason why they are hiring in, tech people is because they need to modernize, they need to, technify, right? So that's the opportunity. And so go for those jobs, right? Now, there's going to be competition, for those jobs, from all the people that left also, right? That don't have jobs. So now you have to prepare really well for that. But fear not. I'm going to tell you how to do that. All right, let's talk about confidence. In my experience, to be confident in your interviews, you really need to anticipate and prepare for what's going to come in the interview. And there are 4 steps to do that. And the first step is you need to know what the interview format is going to be. Right? By that, I mean, is it going to be 1 round, 2 rounds? How long is the question going to take? Because you have to time yourself to prepare properly, and who is asking the questions, right? If it's a VP versus a manager, then the scope of your answer is going to be different, right? So VP is going to be more high level. Second, find out the type of questions that they are going to ask, right? So there are different type of questions that companies ask, and it's very important that you know ahead of time. Prepare for those types of questions, obviously, and you can do that in various forms. And then read regularly about business, about the markets, about products, about technology. Why am I saying that? Because that's going to make you much more creative, right? So because your creativity, when you answer a question, is going to come from things that you have read, right? All right, so let's talk about how do you find out about the interview format? Well, here, the recruiter is your best friend, right? It's in your best interest, actually, so that you get that job, right? So they're probably going to inform you of that. If they don't, ask them, right? You don't lose any points. And also use stellar peers. I'm going to talk about that. We have, a community of people that are actively interviewing right now, and that they are doing mock interviews with each other. So what happens is that they get out of the interview, they do a mock with their partner, and they say, hey, I had these questions, and it was in this format and stuff like that, right? So that's a good way to find out. The question types. Here, again, the recruiter is your best friend, right? And many companies, in fact, at least the big techs, right? They have an entire guide to give you on how to prepare for their interviews. And some companies do also, some medium-sized companies. But the recruiter will know, right? So ask the recruiter. You don't lose any points for that. And also use stellar peers. So stellar peers has a pool of questions that our community shares. So every time they leave an interview, boom, they go and share the question, right? And we categorize them. So that's also a good resource to go and look for the type of questions that they're being asked, they're asking. Now, how do you prepare for these questions, right? So there are different types of questions, right? There are the behavioral, there are the situational, and there are the cases questions in general, right? Now, not all of the companies are asking all of them, but they are doing a mix and match, right? So, but what's the best way to prepare for these questions? It's particularly for the case questions, right? So if you get a question like a product design question that is, how do you design a pen? I'm like, whoa, how do you start, right? That seems like a very open-ended question. Well, it is on purpose, right? So there are frameworks to attack these questions. There are frameworks to attack a product design question, a strategy question, a framework question, how to set metrics, how to define goals, right? And so start with frameworks, with a good framework. Then look at good examples of answers, right? Written answers. And then go and grab real questions to practice, right? There are sources out there, Stellar Peers has them too, as I said. And then practice. Practice is truly important because now you have to put everything together that you learn, and you need to write down the question so that you can actually understand how you're analyzing that question, understand how you're applying that framework. You need to write it. And then once you write it, you don't have to write it all the time, all of the questions, but at least at the beginning. And then practice with somebody that gives you feedback. And that is really important, right? Because with feedback, you're going to get better. So Stellar Peers has, the resources to help you with these 4 steps. So I want to show you what we have and what you can use there. Let's see. And I need to reshare my screen. Hold on, because I'm going to share this particular part. All right. Can you guys see this screen? Yes, Jenny?
Yep, we can see it. And one thing that I would want to say, because I know not everyone, you and I are in the world working with a lot of people on product management, but you have stuff in here on behaviorals, right? You have additional context in here. So while plenty of your stuff is about product management, you also have other content that's more generally applicable.
Yes, absolutely. So there are people that are practicing for several types of jobs that are mostly product related. And you can think of marketing, not only product management, marketing, even data scientists are coming here, or even engineers that are practicing for the behavioral questions, right? So there are 6 modules.
And everybody's going to have behaviorals.
Everybody's going to have behaviorals and situational questions for sure, right? Specifically, also Amazon, not specifically, but Amazon people, right? So we have a lot of people practicing for Amazon. So we have 6 modules. The first module is the frameworks, which we have categorized. We have frameworks for each type of questions, right? And we cover basically almost all, right? And then we have also solved cases, written solved cases, very high quality, to demonstrate how you answer these questions. The very popular feature that we have is our mock interviews with peers, right? So you can practice 24/7 to your heart's content with other people that are practicing for the same company or the same type of question. You can define that. We also have coaching videos where I coach a group of people and teach them how, introduce them to a framework on how to answer a question. Then we go into the exercise of applying the framework and do's and don'ts of what to do and not to do during the interview. We also have the pool of interview questions, which are real interview questions from companies. And finally, coaching either at the group level, or I coach at the individual level, right? And have hundreds of people. I mean, I have 60 plus that I know of that have gotten jobs at Google and Meta and all the top companies. But what I wanted to show you more specifically is the mock interviews feature here, because I think, this is a free service that you can use right away, okay? And it's really phenomenal because you really need to practice how are you going to communicate and deliver your answer. So here, what you see is very easy. It's a calendar where you schedule your mock interview. You can enter an event, then you say, hey, I want to practice, I want to practice for Amazon, principles questions, somebody wants to practice with me. And so that's a green slot. If somebody sees that slot, checks you out and says, yeah, I want to practice with you. And then it becomes red, means it's occupied. So that all these people are practicing, right? The red ones are people that already have partners, and the green ones are open. And you can also observe, provided the people, partnering gave you their permission. All right, so let's go back to the presentation. Here. Let's see. All right. And I'm going to share again. 1 second. Share my screen. All right. Let's go back to this. All right. Now let's talking about reading, right? And why it's important to read. So these are resources that I actually read on a daily basis, weekly basis, that have helped me a lot. TechCrunch, I'm sure a lot of you know that. TechMeme, which is a newspaper basically for tech news. Any newspaper, New York Times or WS, read about markets, the business, technology, keep up with that. Strategy is a great platform by Ben Thompson, where he writes about companies and the strategies that they're following, and he create models, right? So it's really great because you can see how he thinks and how he's connecting the dots. And that allows you to also appropriate that kind of thinking in your interviews. PM bloggers, Ken Norton, Sachin Brecky, Roman Schwiller, great bloggers on products overall in marketing. And two blogs that I really love are HubSpot marketing blog, high quality, super quality blogs, as well as AHA blog, which is very much into strategy. And, if you guys have other resources that you currently, read, it would be great if you can share them on the screen. And maybe Jenny, you can have a look at that, what people are saying, what they read to keep up with their careers. All right.
Yeah, any favorite blogs or podcasts or
anything that you want to share with us?
People you follow on, if anyone's still on Twitter. And some teams would be like, because I know a lot of people in my network are come from that recruiting field. So maybe it's so Lenny's podcast, all right. Ed Week. Yeah, if you're coming from higher ed, if you're coming from recruiting. So whatever, your sector is. Great.
Cool. So, when you think about interview, what's the hardest part of interview? With all my experience, the hardest part of an interview is communication. It's really, can you communicate well? Especially, can you be structured? Can you be succinct? And people struggle with that, right? So what you need to do is to actually get feedback from other people and then incorporate that feedback as you can continue practicing. And that's the way to get better at communications. Now, two questions that people ask also is, well, how do I know I'm ready for the interview and how long does it take? You are ready when people tell you, continuously that you are doing well. So that's when you should feel that you're ready, right? And how long does it take to be ready? Well, it depends, right? So it depends on the company that you are applying. It depends on the question types that they're asking you. And it depends, how experienced you are, in interviewing. Obviously, if you're applying to Google, for example, it can take, and you are just beginning to prepare, right? It takes, I would say, between 3 to 6 months even, right? And some people take even a year. I've seen people applying like for 2 years in a row, and then they get it on the second time. And for companies that are medium sized, that are more into like, situational questions and a few, cases, I would say it would take between, 1 month and 3 months. Now, for Amazon, if you're beginning to prepare, because they have so many principles, right? And you have to write stories for them, it should take between 2 to 3 months. That's what I would say, especially if you're working. But if you're not working, it's going to take less. All right. And then finally, I want to provide a gift today for those of you that are participating. So we have a promo code for Stellar Peers, and the word is confidence. It has, you can use it for this week, right? And it has, you can use it for any of the subscriptions that we have, right? But before I leave, I want to leave you with a reminder that, to get that confidence that you need, you really need the feedback from people, right? So keep practicing, get that feedback incorporated, right? And, when you practice, it's not only that you're getting feedback, you're also connecting with the other person, right? So at Stellar Peers, for example, lots of people become real good friends. They create this professional network and that support each other right now at this time, specifically, right? And they become really good friends. And that's what you need, at this moment, because really interviewing, it's really hard. right? Preparing for an interview is hard work, it's painful, right? And if you have a group of friends that are together doing this, it becomes so much easier, right? So I really encourage you to, to practice with others. And yeah, thank you for coming to this talk.
Thank you so much, Malena. So the number one thing that I would say, and I've had to give myself this own advice, is that the researching what questions the company is likely to ask. Stellar Peers has information on there. Glassdoor has information. Sometimes it can be kind of noisy.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to kind of go through that. Sometimes LinkedIn has a section on there when they show, you kind of have to dig around into it. But they will have information on other questions, and then talking with people. So if you have friends who work at that company, even if they're in a different type of role, they can give you a sense of some of that cultural fit questions that at the end of the day, you being qualified there for the job may be able to knock it out of the park on more of those situational questions for, do you have the qualifications for the role? But it's just a matter of being able to then apply to fitting into that company culture and knowing what they're going to be asking for and knowing what they're going to look for and knowing what things you might say that would say, oh, this person's not going to be a fit here. And also too, like finding that out, and maybe in you finding out what types of questions they ask in the interview process and what their culture is like, you're able to say, oh, wow, that doesn't sound like a place for me.
Yeah, that's very important.
Right? Because you need to, anyway, it's a mutual fit process. And I know it can sound really privileged for, myself, who currently, is employed, but, I do think being able to land at a place where you're excited to be, and it is a cultural fit, there's just far more sustainability and longevity that can come from that. So,
yep.
Other questions while you have us both here, if anyone want to put them in the chat, we're happy to approach you on that. I've seen some people on practicing, maybe they've never done mocks with another person before, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get in front of a stranger. But, that's what your cell phone can be for, and recording yourself and answering a question. So pulling out a list of common behavioral questions, or tell me about yourself, or why do you want to work at this company? Why do you want this particular role? And first writing out those questions, and then actually practice recording yourselves and maybe sending it to a friend. If you want to, get friendly advice first before maybe exposing yourself to a stranger. But other people like, yeah, I would actually rather talk to a stranger because I don't want to.
I think one thing that people need to remember is that it's better to fail in a mock interview than to fail in an interview. Yeah. So that to me is like, okay, so I think who cares if it's a stranger, right? Yes. But maybe some people are shy, but I think it's better to get feedback from a lot of people. Exactly.
And one other thing too that I would say that I see is a lot of interviews are happening entirely on Zoom. And so having your notes ready to go, especially with Amazon, right? If you're going to the leadership principles, you can look at those stories that you've written up to jog your memory. You can be paying attention to they asked me this question. I think it was this leadership principle, and be able to have that. And then one other thing too of getting comfortable having questions ready to ask for those interviewers. And having those prepared, but having done all the preparation that Malena has mentioned here, having gone through those repetitions and feeling confident going into the interview, and having your notes at the ready to be able to reference if you do feel your brain freeze up, which it can do. And then being able to recover. And, a lot of interviews, they get it. They know that interviewing can be anxiety provoking for people, and they'll let you restart a response and finish strong. So
yep.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions for people? We got a little more time here with us. All right. Well, Malena,
Thank you very much.
Great to see you on the same time zone. I will be back in Seattle tomorrow night. And let me actually share screen. Well, let me do this. Okay. Next up is going to be on. Come here, little guy. Yeah, you get your A game on. That's my little treat for you. So I'm going to be with Louis Lynn, and he has written multiple books about career preparation, and some of it has been in product and marketing, but he also has this other book of like 71 salary negotiation email samples. And so he and I are just going to be in conversation. And so I'm going to open up again with an exercise to check in and talk about that coping with the transition and take it from a slightly different angle that time around. And then Louis will share some additional insights around preparing for interviews. And one of the great things is being able to hear from different people. Some people will have the same message and other people will give you a message that's maybe conflicting, and you just have to see what's going to work for you, right? And then we'll also talk a little bit about negotiating offers. So hope to see some of you in a few weeks. If I do sneak in another speaker between now and then, if you've signed up for my email list on my website, I will be pushing that out. Otherwise, we're going to have a little midwinter break here, hiatus, before circling back in a few weeks with Louis. So I feel very honored to have these amazing career experts joining me, giving their time to help give back. And we really want to see you be successful and happy in your next thing. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great rest of your day.